In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything that you need to know about Photoshop's interface. We usually call it Workspace because that's the way you can customize it and save it, which I'm going to also show you in this video. But first of all, let's talk about the main parts of Photoshop. We have the menus on the top. Then we have the options bar just below it, where you will see always options for the currently selected tool from the toolbar on the left. Then we have the document window in the middle, and we already talked about the tabs on the top with which you can switch between documents. And then you have the panels on the right. Now, some panels might be open, some panels might be collapsed, and some panels might be just icons. So that's like a general overview, but now let's have a closer look at each of these areas. And let me start with tools because you are going to work with them a lot. So you saw me already using the Move tool, which is the first one here on the options bar, but there's so many other tools here, and some actually hides some additional options. Like this one here, if I click and hold on it, I will see actually the currently selected tool's name, but also I can see that there's many other tools in this set. Once you select that tool, you will be able to tell that the options bar changes and it will give you the options for that currently selected tool. Like the Content Aware Move tool, by default will have the option called Extend, which means if I make a selection of a detail here, and then I click and drag it, it's going to extend that detail and just copy it onto the other part of the image. So it still keeps the original one here. But if I change this option in the options bar, so remember that was the name of this area here on the top. So if I change it to Move and I make another selection, and now I drag this detail. Once I click on accept or press enter or return on the keyboard, it's going to not only move it, but also remove it from the original position. Photoshop will always remember your last used settings for every tool. So if I next time come back to this tool, it will remember that I use Move. But if you want to reset all the settings for this tool, you can go to this little drop down here, and then click on the settings icon and choose reset tool, or you can even choose reset all the tools in Photoshop. So choosing different options for tools is already a bit of customization, but of course there's so much more you can change within Photoshop. For example, you can change the set of tools that you have or reorder them by using this option here called Edit Toolbar. Now, this is only in Creative Cloud, so don't look for it in previous versions. But if you are a Creative Cloud user, once you click on Edit Toolbar, you will see the list of all the different tools. And then if there are a couple of tools that you don't usually work with, you can drag them into the extra tools, like these two marquee tools I just removed. And if I click on Done, now you will see that these won't show up here in the actual category, but it will show up under the additional tools or extra tools category. So that is already a customization. You can also decide whether you want to see two columns or one individual column for the tools, which depends on your screen size you might decide to change. But now let's move on to the document window. So we already talked about the tabs here on the top in the previous video, but then we have these things here called rulers. Now the rulers can be turned on or off from the view menu. So you will find it here, rulers, and there's a shortcut which is useful to remember. It's Command or Control R. If I press that, I can hide them or show them again very quickly. And you can right click on the rulers to change the measurement. So if I switch to inches, you will see that. If I switch back to pixels, I will see that measurement again. And notice that it starts always from the top left corner. So the countdown starts from there. These rulers will be useful for measuring, of course, and also for creating guides, which I'm going to show you later on. The background color of the document window can be easily changed as well by right-clicking on it. So if you need a darker background, you can choose black, or you can choose brighter if you prefer that. But I'm just going to switch back to default. And the same way, actually, you can customize the whole interface of Photoshop. So if you want to change the brightness of it, you will have to go to the preferences. And preferences can be found under the Photoshop menu if you are a Mac user. If you are a PC user, you will find it under the Edit menu, somewhere all the way at the bottom here, near Keyboard Shortcuts. So once we are in Preferences, we can choose the category, and in this case, we need Interface. So let's just click on that, and you'll see that we can very easily switch between different brightness options. I prefer to work with darker colors on the interface, so I'm going to stick with this default darker gray color, and I click OK. And then before we move on to the panels on the right, there's one more thing here at the bottom which I would like to mention. This is called the status bar. And by default here, you will have document sizes, which will show you file size of the document, which might increase when you start creating layers. But if I want, I can also customize this, and there's some very useful options here, like document dimensions. So if I click on that, I will see the pixel size and the resolution of the file. Now here on the right side, we have panels. And I already customized this as well, so I changed the panels around. But what you will see by default when you open up Photoshop is the Essentials setup. And that's a standard workspace saved within Photoshop. So if I switch to that, I will get a different set of panels. So this is another very important part that you can customize and make it tailored to whatever type of work you do within Photoshop. So you will see some panels are visible, some panels are hidden behind other panels, and then we have also panels which are just small icons. The panels that we have here on the right are called docked panels. And these are called iconic panels, which I can click on to show and then click again to hide. If I want, I can also create floating panels. All you need to do is to grab a panel by its tab, and then it becomes a floating panel. These floating panels can be moved anywhere. And if I close a panel, by the way, I can always go to the window menu where all the panels are listed to open it back again. So if I click on it, it will remember exactly where it was last time. So if I want to move it further, I can, but I can also either double click on the tab to minimize it, or I can also use this double arrow here to collapse it into an iconic state. When it's an icon, I can make it even smaller by dragging one of the sides of it. And if I want to see it again as a normal panel, I can click on Expand Panel. You can also resize panels. Not all of them, but most of them can be resized. And also every panel will have a panel menu where you will find additional options. Now if I want to dock this panel back, I can drag and drop it here under the other icons. And you will always see a blue line indicating where your panel is going to land. So if I let go, it will become an iconic panel. And I can click on it to open it or collapse it again by clicking on it again. But then I can drag it further here on the other panels, and if I let go there, it will place the panel there. I can even drag it further out to the right edge of my screen, and if I let go, it will create an additional column for this panel, which might be a little bit too much for the color panel. And what I prefer to do is to have as much space as possible for my layers panel, and of course for the document window where I'm going to do my work. So I don't like for the panels to take up too much space. Instead, I prefer to have them as icons. So I'm going to drag these panels here. Libraries can also go there. And then adjustments panel can go here as well. And some panels I might not even need, like the styles panels I hardly use. I can right click on it and choose close. But you will see now I have plenty of space for both to work on the image that I'm currently seeing, and also I have plenty of space for layers. And layers panel is probably the most important one to see, so that's why I prefer to have as much space for it as possible. Now, once you customize the interface, you can save it as your custom workspace. So if I go to the drop down here on the top right corner, which is the workspace selector, I can see some default options here and some of my custom settings as well. And I can also choose new workspace. That's the way you save your current settings. So I'm just going to call it practice. And apart from the panel locations, you can also make sure that this setup will remember the changes you've done to the toolbar and even to menus and keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to talk about these later on in another video, but for now, I'm just going to click Save, and you will see that we have the option here on the top. So if I want to switch back to another setting or workspace, I say for drawing, I can switch to that. You will see that the panels will change. Then I can switch back to practice, and all the panels and everything will fall back in place the way I've set it up. And that's all you need to know about the interface of Photoshop. But in the next video, I'm going to walk you through how to navigate within documents. So zooming in and out, panning, rotating your view, switching between screen modes, and I promise you will learn lots of useful keyboard shortcuts.